Hello.
Hello, Sean. Hello, everybody. And thank you for joining us today. We are happy to welcome you all on behalf of Canixar and Marché du Film. We are here to explore new ways to interact and also to present projects and XR works during this so special edition. This keynote is programmed by our partner VRTL, and during this keynote you will be able to ask questions to the speaker, here Sean Rodrigo, using the Q&A box in our Zoom session. You can see in the menu bar you have a Q&A spot, and you can open it and write type question, and it's not talking. So now let's give the floor to Sean Rodrigo to talk about spatial creation. Please, Sean.
Thanks very much for having me. So I'm just going to press the magic button and make sure that it all works. And pull it open. Okay. So thanks very much for having me, everyone. Today what I wanted to really talk about is around using spatial creation tools or spatial design tools for in a more human way to design worlds for humans. Now that sounds a bit silly. Obviously everything is always designed for humans, but in this case, what I really wanted to talk about is some of the things that I think are important as far as benefits for designing using tools where you're using controllers and the headset as the tool for designing immersive experiences. Now, this is different to how lots of, in history, how we've done things in the past, creating artwork on flat 2D screens. And I'm a real believer in the ability of immersive tools, which are designed specifically for creating human experiences with a handcrafted feel. But before we jump into all of that, I just want to sort of flick through sort of where we have come from versus to where we are now. And the first thing that I want to show you is just what virtual reality equipment has looked like in the last 50 years or so now. And, you know, this is one of the first pieces of hardware that came out running an application called the Sword of Damocles. I don't know if I got that right. But that was 1968. So the reason why I'm showing you this is just to show you that sort of that the way that headsets have come from where they are to where they are now has come from this very much a function over form sort of way. This is very unwieldy. It's obviously not built for the comfort of a human. It looks a little bit like a torture device. But you know, when you're first starting with this technology, when you first any technology, you're really thinking about how do you get it to function, and that's, you know, I applaud all the developers and the engineers out there just trying to get these things to work. And I know how hard it is to get something to be, you know, working inside of a headset, you know, in a way that works well versus just looks nice and doesn't do anything. So, you know, this is another prototype NASA. We're getting closer and closer to sort of something that resembles a prototype for people. And, you know, this funnily enough included a pair of gloves for the virtual environment workstation project, or VIEW as NASA will call it. This is a black and white photo, although it wasn't that long ago. This is Pixar's Toy Story 1 render farm, and this is the computing power that it took to make this work happen. And one of the things that I wanted to sort of make a point of here is that this is the sort of environment that the computers and the design of the environment that existed for humans. It was not designed for humans, it was designed for computers. We're talking large, unwieldy machines with difficult input devices, air-conditioned rooms, not designed for the the sort of human element of ergonomics or anything. It was just really trying to get the work done, and amazingly so. But for the time, that's what, you know, human interfaces looked like. And then we get to the current day where we have one of the most comfortable headsets is the Valve Index, made last year, which includes now the use for hand presence. And of course, we have headsets like the Oculus Quest and the HTC Vive, which allow you to do controllerless hand input, which as a function of the technology is only really, for me, as exciting because it enables us to be interfaced directly with the computer versus having to have a wall of code or a wall of buttons between us and that interface, to be able to create something without the barriers. So here's some of the work that, just to give you an idea of that I do. I work as an artist. I work as a commercial artist creating installations for corporates and brands, but I also create art installations such as at the most recent MIT hackathon for virtual reality, which was, we created a robot dance party for people to use when they're when they're kind of taking a break from hacking. And then a number of installations across the world, which included, underwater scenes. And these are all made by hand. So if you're not familiar with these tools, there is a growing community of very talented artists, people from traditional worlds who are turning their hands towards this technology to be able to design something that still feels handcrafted, even though it is in the virtual world. And this is an example of the sort of reaction we're getting from audiences with the work that we've been able to do. Is kind of the most rewarding part of my job, is creating something that feels genuine and feels like a human interaction has been made better through the technology. And that's not something you get a lot with technology nowadays. A lot of it's designed to distract you, to take your eyeballs away from what is important. So I'm going to click this really quickly. Play this. This is when you close your eyes and you imagine a happy place, what's the first thing that you think of?
I think of a garden, and in this garden I can just imagine various flowers, and they grow. And also there's a fruit tree, and a lot of birds visit the garden. It's permanently sunshine, there's no rain, and there's a hammock. What we could have is a lion's head that spouts water coming out of the mouth, and that water is ginger ale.
What did you want to be when you were growing up?
A ballet dancer.
Ballet dancer?
Yeah. Well, I imagine there could be a small stage with velvet curtains.
Just jumping forward just for the interest of time. So we put Stephen in the headset, and this was his reaction to that world that I'd painted.
Wow. Oh, wow. Oh, this beautiful blue butterfly. It's just, the colour is just... Oh, who's that on there? On top of the... Who's that? That's just amazing. Look at that. Incredible.
So the reason why I'm showing you that is just that example of, not only have we used a more human way of being able to show other people the artwork that I had created for Lad Bible and 3Mobile there, but also the reaction from people. So using the technology to sort of transport someone into a place and then have them explore things in a more natural way, which is really the biggest thing for me. So here's some of the spatial tools that I think are kind of the most used at the moment. There are a lot more, but these are probably the most actively developed programs out there currently. And the ones on the left are created by big players such as Google and Facebook. So these are, and Microsoft, including Microsoft and Cat on the bottom, which doesn't have a text there. And then on the ones on the right, you'll see independently developed applications, which are incredibly powerful. Small teams of people doing an amazing job at creating something that takes the essence of what it means to be creative and how allows you to translate that without the barriers to the creativity that you would otherwise get with really technical programs. Now, there's nothing wrong with those existing technical programs. They're still as valid as ever before, but these are ways of augmenting that. So one of the things I wanted to sort of go through is the reason for what I think is the importance of the kind of spatial tools and for designing for the human experience is that for me, we're living in this second coming of the Renaissance. And just like the past Renaissance, the Renaissance was a time of tectonic shift of culture, intellectualism, beliefs. And I feel like now is... has never been a better time for us to start thinking about the fact that not only are we living in this time of kind of constant changing of people to evolve and change the way they work, but also it's a need for people to use the technology to be able to make a profound, meaningful sort of impact on other people's lives, and using this technology that otherwise past generations just never had access to. And we should use that opportunity to its full extent to be able to create beautiful, meaningful experiences. And that's why it brings me to kind of looking back to the past for the future. For me, the one thing that I would want for the industry more so than anything is for the community, for artists and designers and programmers and product makers to think about creating an immersive Bauhaus. So a new Bauhaus, if you would, that references the model, the success that came out of the innovations that happened in the Bauhaus in Germany, and try and take those learnings to create better human experiences and design products. And the reason, so example of that is Dieter Rams, the famous product designer. You know, whilst not designing experiences, he was designing products that enabled people to have better designed interactions with products. And his whole methodology revolves around the idea that that good design is invisible. Good design is invisible, and that you cannot understand good design if you do not understand people, and that design is made for people. So there's this idea that I'm trying to push at the way of thinking that designers and animators we need to sort of try and work out a way of being able to take the methodologies that have worked and design experiences with the function, the form and the function balanced here, and using some of the examples of the principles of the Bauhaus is that there should not be barriers between artists and craftsmen or developers. There should not be a focus on just the function of the actual product. It should have, the form should inform the function and vice versa. And it should be useful and meaningful before it's just operational. And then also, you know, looking at things like keeping things simple and beautiful and elegant and in their core that make things work for the audience or for the user. So here are some examples that I think are really powerful examples of that sort of new wave of thinking, using these tools to design, using the technology as just a tool. You pick it up and you think just as much about the tool as you do a paintbrush when you're painting. And that is one of the first examples I'm very actively involved with is Tavori. It's a product that's developed by a small independent team, and they do an amazing job to create something that is an animation platform that allows you to animate and prototype spatial design in a spatial design software. And it's natural. You can pick things up with your hands and move them around to create create animations and blueprints for an example that's going to go into Unity. So you can create your own application. In fact, they design their application inside their own application, so that timeline is designed. It's simple, beautiful, and elegant, and really easy to use and it gets out of your way. It works for people, and it's got flexible applications, so you can use it for creating applications, for animations, virtual production, storyboards for 360. It really does. It feels like something that has been created with humans in mind, which is something I'm a really big fan of. And just another example of an experience here. It's not a creative experience, but it's a social application that allows multiple people to live inside of these dream worlds called Half Plus Half. And it feels magical. It has this relaxing, calming feel, which I don't think a lot of VR experiences have. They kind of go straight for the scary or the unnerving or learning curves that are quite high. And then it's beautifully simple, and it connects people, which the technology I think is really strong at doing, and isn't something that every piece of technology does. Displayland is a iPhone and Android-based application that allows people to capture three-dimensional models of the real world and share them based on where they are, and share them to other people. And this is about creating something that is approachable, it's useful, it helps people document their time and their place in the world. And it also enables people it inspires creativity. And that for me is the most important thing. If it's not inspiring creativity, if it doesn't make you want to get up and dance, if it doesn't make you want to create a world for your loved ones, then this is the sort of thing that I think virtual reality needs to focus on from my perspective. And then the last tool that I'm a big fan of is developed in London is Litho. It's an AR ring, which you can use to interact with augmented reality experiences. And as simple as that is, a very basic Bluetooth enabled haptic touch display application. That as simple as that is, the feeling you get when you pick up an object and you smash it on the ground is satisfying. It's unexpected. It makes you feel like you just want to create things with your hands that don't exist in the real world. So being playful and inspiring you to do that. I'm sitting at a train station here smashing VR cubes. That for me is kind of the most exciting thing. So with the time I have left, I wanted to sort of just reiterate the point of this talk is really to try and say to people, if you're first of all, we need a Xavier's School for talented, it's for what is it? Xavier's School for I was going to say special children. That's not it. Exceptional children. And we need a Bauhaus, somewhere where people can take all the learnings that they've got in their specialities and create something that is a collaboration of artists with a common cause. We need to take these methodologies that have worked in the past and combine them with the technology of the future, which was very much a core element of the Bauhaus, and for creating experiences that remove the barriers to creative thinking, putting humans into the world and not putting the barrier between them, finding the beauty in the simplicity of the design and the experiences that we enjoy as just non-digital existent people. So thinking about the things that intrinsically make us excited and make us, you know, fall in love with something, be that beautiful or be that exciting and useful. I always encourage people to think about diversifying their tools, and the Bauhaus always talked about using smart use of resources and thinking about how to combine the different approaches and the different methodologies they have to be able to create things quickly instead of having to wait for things to be made for them or to be made easy. So if you can use a tool quickly to get a result, to show someone your idea, that's going to be better than just sitting on the idea. And then the idea is that form should follow the function of the application, or the product. That this idea that if we are creating experiences that just function really well and there are other applications that are just beautiful, then that's not going to work. We really need to think about how we can make beautiful experiences that serve a really beautiful purpose, which I think is the recipe that the examples I've shown today and the work that I do painting in virtual reality is really a focus on. So that is pretty much me, but I mean, the work that I'm doing is trying to think about how to combine art, technology, and science to be able to make things that are both commercially interesting and also relevant to audiences, no matter who they are. And so yeah, that is the sort of approach to the new world order of things that I'm taking. And hopefully, if you have any questions, you can always jump in and ask them, or send me messages online. My information is on the bottom.
Thank you, Sean. So if you have questions for Sean Rodrigo, you can write it in the Q&A box so that they can answer to you. And perhaps waiting for a question to arrive, you can tell us more about the VR painting that you would have liked to show us today, but finally not. So what was the project? And could you explain us?
Yeah. So in the interest of time, unfortunately, painting and looking great on camera don't quite work. So I chose the vanity option and went with something that I thought would be something that I could speed through and enable people to ask questions and work and sort of get enough out of that presentation. But the work that I'm doing at the moment is, let me see if I can share that screen again. Sorry, I pulled my screen back off. The work that I was doing for the underwater painting was actually created for a conference in Russia, which I thought was quite fun. We created an environment that you can walk around in, and the idea is to try and create experiences that have interactivity and allow people to explore a virtual world and get lost in these spaces. And yeah, I'm just using controllers and a headset to create that in applications like Google Tilt Brush, Tvori, Gravity Sketch, another great application made in London. Yeah. So that's one of many projects available to me, sort of online at the moment. I see we got a question. I'm just trying to juggle screens to get the Q&A box to come up.
Oh, yes.
Will painting in VR evolve like painting on canvas, and how and where to? Okay, so yes, definitely. Painting is an ever-evolving medium in physical form, and I believe that will be the same with VR. I mean, we're getting to the stage now where there are people creating applications every day. There's new applications popping up, and there's also new ways of creating with the input devices that we have. I mean, there aren't quite as many applications that are using hand tracking yet, but there are people creating pens for the input of creating design, one of which is called Massless. They're based in London as well, and where they've got a pen that you can use to paint, so that feels like we're getting closer to a kind of a parallel sort of comparison there with actual painting. But I also think that new paints come out, new types of painting or new approaches to painting is really exciting. So I quite like watching what people are doing online, and there's some amazing artists out there that do something very different to what I do. But yeah, I think I may have clicked Michael and allowed him to jump in. So is that Michael there?
I opened Michael's microphone so he can answer and precise if you want.
Okay, that's that. Yep.
Hi there, do you hear me, Sean?
I can, yeah.
I was just wondering, because what you mentioned was reminding me on maybe how painting on canvas started, like the real painting with real paint and so on. And I mean, there was a lot of evolvement on styles of paintings over the centuries. And so I was just wondering, what's your take on how will painting in VR will evolve and influenced by what?
Definitely, that's a good. Now that's a. Thanks for clarifying the question. I mean, the first thing that most people do is they paint a 2D image in 3D. That's the default thing that you're taught to do. Now, if you put children in the headsets, they always paint 3D because they're not quite. They haven't learnt to force perspective into a 2D screen. So unlearning that is something that a lot of people struggle with to start with. But to answer your question, there are artists out there who are creating amazing art for different uses. So some people are creating beautiful artwork just for mixed reality so that you can see what they're painting, which I can contest to is actually quite difficult to do because you're painting everything backwards, because you don't want to be putting everything in front of your face. You want to be able to be painting in situ, which is what you saw before. There are some artists that are creating installations where you're walking through things, mapping them to the real world so that you have paintings over top of real world objects, like a location-based experience. And then there's just amazing variation in the style of animation. Some people are going for photorealism. I go for more technicolor environment painting. Some people are very much into designing portraits, and some people have gone with an impressionist style where they're painting with just one type of brush, which is really exciting because everyone has a very different style. Yeah, does that answer your question? He's muted.
Muted. I mute him now.
Sorry,
but there is another question if you want to answer.
Let's move on there. Let's move on.
Yeah.
So what is your favorite VR platform, social VR platform? Okay, so they've managed to mention quite a lot there. I think social VR is not I wouldn't consider it as a creative application and sort of straight up. A lot of applications do have creative tools inside them, such as Rec Room, which is very robust. I think Rec Room is probably the best designed, even though it's not kind of a high poly, high resolution application. It's been designed very well. And I've gone through a lot of these applications with some theater companies recently to try and work out ways of creating them. The one I would say is probably the most human friendly would be probably Rec Room, I would say, sorry. But also the one I think is really powerful is Mozilla Hubs. Mozilla Hubs is A-frame based, so it's all web based, which means you can be on a headset, a VR headset, or you can be on a mobile headset, or you can be on a desktop. So the accessibility and the ability to move around and get the feel for it, even from a 2D screen, is very powerful. So that would be what I would say. But I mean, Social VR is still a work in progress. Actually, the one application I would say I can vouch for, which is really exciting, is a application called The Wild, which is if you Google The Wild VR, it's a collaboration platform for architecture, visualization, and virtual worlds. So you can create SketchUp models or Revit models, bring them in, and then walk around them with multiple people. And that's been very, very, very cool. So that's one of the applications I would use. It's sort of say, go have a look at.
Okay, and perhaps a last question written by Ada, and we have to conclude just after. Can people interact with the bird, fish in the virtual painting?
At this stage, no. The bird and the paintings that I've done that you've seen, that I've shown you, both the fish and the environment for Stephen, were just talk brush paintings at this stage. But the work I'm doing at the moment is working with developers to extend that to have situations where you're underwater and you've got fish in front of you, and if you touch them, they swim away from you, or if you touch them, they create something that's that kind of moves the story on from there. So yeah. Do you want me to take one more question, or do you think that we're
shortly, if you want? Yes.
Yes.
Just
okay. I'm going to be short.
For 1 minute.
Okay. So I will using light, then working with color in this medium. Okay. I'm going to take. So there's a question of finding funding or revenue for this type of work. Where would you like to have funding, particularly public? So making money as an artist is similar. A virtual artist is similar to working as an illustrator or a painter. You find work through either commissions or you work as a commercial illustrator, which is what I do with this work. There's also some very interesting, public funding bodies out there, as well as private ones. So there is a small but growing audience of people who are willing to fund these projects. I would say probably not right now, but at some stage, location-based entertainment is one of the most exciting things for this sort of work. But there are also people doing things like selling the artwork through crypto art collections, which is quite interesting. I haven't done that, but it's something that has popped up. So 3 to 5, 10 years ago from now, I see that this potentially will be an avenue that will be more mainstream, and people might be selling and buying artwork for their house like they do with existing paintings, and there might be more funding that might replace things like technology that's on the out, or augment existing things, like maybe radio might take on XR as a technology. So it'll replace radio and it'll be XR radio or something like that, So hope that answers your question.
So thank you, Sean, Rodrigo, for coming and explaining all this. It was interesting. We have to conclude now, and I will send you the last question. If you want to answer directly, we will have all the contact and things. And you can see this keynote in replay on the Marché du Film website. Thank you very much. Bye.
No problem. Thank you.